that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 383rd edition of Energy Week with me, George Harvey, and the astonishing Tom Fennell.
In the flesh.
In the flesh. Isn't it nice to have an astonishing person with us as frequently as we do? Okay. Every day I get up. Today I was up at about 5 minutes to 3.
Okay.
And I mentioned this, I think, a week or two ago. I have insomnia, so I get up and I work, and then I go back to sleep. So I'm taking a nap at 8 o'clock in the morning. But I spend about 4.5, 5, sometimes 6 hours looking through the internet for news on energy and climate change. And I put together a synopsis and a link for every article that I find that's interesting. I should say, this line, let's see, where is it? Right there.
Yeah, you can see it.
Yeah, the line is because there's a shield between Tom and me, so we don't get each other infected with diseases we don't have, but hopefully wouldn't have. Anyway, it's protection. It's the reason why we can do this sitting in fairly close proximity with each other without a mask. So BCTV is being good to us. And everything gets scrubbed down with alcohol, and, you know, all the mice get drunk.
We're pretty sanitary here.
Yeah, they're pretty sanitary. I went to the doctor's office yesterday, and I was told that even after every patient went through the office, even the counter on the other side of the room had to be washed down, cleaned.
Wow.
They wanted to make sure that every surface was cleaned down after every patient.
Better safe than sorry.
That's absolutely correct. And anyway, they had a diagnosis for me, which turned out to be good news. So
okay.
I'll probably live another week at least.
Live a what?
Another week
Another
at
week?
least. Live to the end of this show.
So you were worried about some prostate problems.
I wasn't worried about it, really, but my PSAs were high. So
Well, that happens.
They wanted to
This
do
is
a
a very
biopsy.
common ailment for people our
absolutely
age.
is. They wanted to do a biopsy. It's the second biopsy I've had.
Uh-huh.
And it was relatively painless, and it came back negative for cancer. So,
Good.
you know, I have all kinds of health issues, but that's not one of them,
That's not one of
thankfully. So, anyway, I go to the internet, I find the news, I package it up, a synopsis, 50 or 55 words with a link. I put together 10 to 15 of these, and they get assembled into a posting on the internet, which I do every day.
Yep.
And have done every day since 2012. Anyway, Tom and I get the best of the group and present it on this show. So we're starting a week ago
So
today.
we're getting the best of the blog.
We're getting the best of the blog. And we're starting a week ago today, which means we're starting on the 30th of July, today being the 6th of August. And we have a picture. You usually have something to say.
Yeah, I'll put myself up and say it.
Good idea.
Come on. There we go. Hi there. I have to read everything that we're going to talk about so
Yeah.
I know what we're talking about. And some of these I will say are worth reading.
Yeah.
Some of them are almost mandatory.
Yeah, people should know about some of these.
And I'll try to mention some of the better ones.
Well, the one that's coming up first, I think, is something that people should know about.
This is a good one.
Yeah.
Is a good one. I'll let you talk about it.
Okay, well, this is an item from Clean Technica.
Well, I clicked twice, so I got it.
You got... Yeah.
There we go.
Okay, why don't you bring up the picture while we're doing this? This is an item.
That wouldn't hurt.
It wouldn't hurt. There you go. It's an item from Clean Technica, and that is a Proterra bus. And I think Proterra is probably the largest electric bus manufacturing company in the United States.
I think it is.
Yeah.
Oh, I think by a long shot.
Yeah.
There's
now-
Thomas, but Thomas is working with Proterra. They make the school buses.
Yeah, and BYD has a factory in the United States, and I think they're going to be, maybe they already are, manufacturing buses.
They are. We've
In this
talked about
country.
that, yeah.
Well, they're manufacturing buses like mad in China.
In China. I mean, like mad, like
Like mad, yeah. Anyway, what do you have for a title?
Well, we'll start here with China is crushing the USA in electric bus growth. Whoop, what happened to my computer here? Well, I just went to sleep. Well, I got it back.
Okay.
Proterra wants to change that.
Okay.
And Proterra, I believe, means for the earth.
Yeah, I believe
Okay.
that's right. China already has 460,000 electric buses in operation.
460? I only got 420.
Well, you know, my
A
eyes.
bus here, a bus here, who gives a damn?
Yeah, my eyes played a trick on me. Actually, I think it was my mind played a trick on me because I can read that easily enough.
Well,
It's
next-
420,000.
China has 420,000.
Yeah,
We have 600.
Proterra.
That's terrible.
Yeah, it is terrible. Proterra has developed a battery leasing program for local governments that brings the upfront investment in an e-bus down to the same level as the legacy diesel. And
Well, that's the upfront investment, which right now is higher for electric buses.
yeah,
But the operating costs are much lower.
yeah, and this is the trick in electric buses. And this information I'm giving you is stuff I dug up about 8 months ago and was at least 4 months old, so it's probably year-old information. The cost of electric buses, like the rest of these new technology things,
It's plummeting.
it's plummeting. And it had dropped a year ago to the point where it was about 150% of the cost of a diesel bus. But the cost of operating the electric bus was
It's
so
almost
low.
non-existent.
Yeah, well, they have to pay for electricity.
Well, if they got solar panels, they don't even have to pay for that.
And then they have maintenance, just like, you know,
They got to change tires, maybe.
windshield wipers.
Windshield wipers. Yeah.
And eventually,
Every once in a while, somebody loses an ignition key.
yes, I think that is a serious maintenance issue for electric
Oh,
buses.
try to get a new one, and you're not going to get it cheap.
No, you're not. But nevertheless, you're right about this. The cost of maintenance on these buses is really, really small. So the difference in the cost of fuel and maintenance between electric and diesel means that the difference in cost in the original purchase is made up in 4 years.
Okay.
And then
How about
what
that?
happens is you've got about 8 years ahead of you with the electric bus in which you make a lot of
Coasting.
money.
You're coasting after that.
Yeah, that's right. And so the result of that is that electric buses, I read about a year ago, were upwards of 50% of all bus sales worldwide.
Worldwide, but not here.
Worldwide, not in the United States. And this is a really good example of a place where the United States has put itself at a serious market disadvantage on its technology.
Oh, for sure. Well, let me mention a couple of things about this. There's an interesting 6-minute video that's
Yeah.
certainly well worth looking at.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's just a comment. They have 700 times more e-buses than we do.
Yeah,
We got 0.1% of the country's total bus fleet is electric.
yeah,
That's ridiculous.
yeah.
There's a quote from the article. We will not see the political will in the United States or Europe to quickly move away from fossil fuels. However, the cost of diesel buses keeps rising while e-buses are steadily getting cheaper.
Yeah.
And as an aside here, this Proterra has begun branching out into electric school buses, which makes an awful lot of sense.
Oh, of course it does. Yes.
You know, they're sitting there all day charging. You know, they could put up a solar panel, so it's not going to cost them anything.
It's a bus. You can
it's-
put the solar panels on the roof.
They could do that too. Yeah.
Okay.
Why do I keep losing this? It keeps coming back. So
Okay.
now let's see. What do I got to do?
Should we move on?
Well, I gotta get this. I gotta get this computer to move on.
Well,
Okay, it's moving on. We got the San Juan generating station.
I will put it up. There it is.
Now we've talked about this guy before, haven't we?
We have.
Let me
There's
put him up.
there's
Yeah.
two. There are two generating stations that are not far from each other. One of them is the San Juan generating station, and the other is the Navajo generating station.
So they're two separate ones,
And they are both closing.
right? And they're both associated with mines.
Yes. Yeah. I mean,
So they're closing the mines and they're closing the.
that's right. And this is the San Juan generating station, and there's a very interesting side.
It's right up
to
there
this.
in New Mexico. It's right on the corner of where the four states come together.
Yes, and this is from the New Mexico.
By the way, it's pretty country. I mean, that's the
Every time I see Arizona highways, I think to myself, that is so beautiful. I'm so glad I'm not there. My skin is just too fair to be able to take the sunshine there. But this is from the New Mexico Political Report.
Yes, it is. Renewables set to replace the coal-fired San Juan generating station.
With a unanimous vote, the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission ended part of the debate on the future of the coal in the Four Corners region.
That's where the four states come together.
Yes, and utility PNM will rely on 100% renewable energy and battery storage to replace the coal-fired San Juan generating station.
And this is the same place that we've talked about several times on
Yeah.
this show. Yeah. Well, I got a little quick takeaway. Ancient Energy had wanted to keep the power plant running on coal, utilizing carbon capture and sequestration technology to capture the emissions and store it underground. But they voted against it, voted that idea down. So these facilities are closing.
Yeah, and one of the things that people should understand about carbon capture and sequestration is that the drive to do that at coal burning and natural gas burning power plants has really only one reason to exist, and that is to prevent assets from being stranded.
Present what?
Prevent assets from being stranded.
Yeah,
So
because they are stranded.
yeah, and it does not reduce the cost of the electricity. It will only increase it. And
Well, where did I read even if it got it free, renewables will still be cheap?
exactly, exactly. You're putting it kind
Hey,
of
it's a new world, guys.
yeah, it kind of reminds me of Vermont Yankee telling the state of Vermont, we're going to give you a deal you can't refuse.
And they refused it.
And they said 6.5 cents per kilowatt hour. And the state of Vermont found that it could get electricity from hydro for 6 cents per kilowatt hour. So why would it buy it from Vermont Yankee?
They made him a deal. You couldn't refuse it. They refused it.
Exactly. The truth is that if it had been exactly the same price, the state would have had to really come up with a much better reason for closing the plant down, because there were a lot of people working there.
They do.
And the hydro.
A lot of the Hopis are working.
Oh, in this one, yes. There's
Yeah.
a lot of people working on these plants and in the mines, and but
Well, it's all on Hopi land.
they're all getting the renewable. One of the things about this particular article is that the renewable power has to be on Hopi land.
I read that. That's
Yeah.
interesting. That's very interesting.
So what they're saying is, okay, we're going to shut this plant down, and it's going to cost however many hundreds of jobs it'll cost, but we're going to provide hundreds of jobs in construction, and then that is going to be followed by the jobs in maintenance.
I read that that's going to be difficult to do just because of the layout of the Hopi land.
Yeah.
It's the population's widely scattered, and many of them aren't connected to the grid.
A lot of people aren't connected to the grid, and that's a reason to give them renewable energy of another kind, which is the household 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 solar panels plus a battery.
Well, that's what's happening with the solar, and I think they got wind there too.
They have wind there, absolutely.
Speaking of wind, let's take a look at some wind turbines.
Oh, let's do that. And this
Come on, you.
this next item
There it
is from Renew Economy.
World's fastest energy transition. The Australian energy market operator maps a path to 94% renewables.
This is so
94%.
this is so funny because I get energy news and climate change news at my blog from Australia every day.
Well, we talk about Australia a lot.
A lot. And
Because a lot of things are happening there.
a lot. Australia has a population that's something like 1/10 of the population of the United States, but it's geographically about the same size.
Well, everybody in Australia lives about 50 miles from the sea. There's practically nobody lives in the middle.
Nobody
of
in the
country.
middle. There's
Yeah.
Alice Springs,
That's it.
which is about it. And
That's 150 miles from nowhere.
that's right. That's right. If you draw a map of nowhere,
It's right in the middle.
it's right in the middle. And Alice Springs, do you know even what they've got all the states and territories. Do you know which one Alice Springs is in?
No.
It's in the Northern Territory, but it's right at the southern end of it. This is
Well, for us Yanks, Australia is a little bit confusing.
it's a little
Less confusing if you watch this show. It's still confusing.
I looked at a historical map of Australia, and the Northern Territories used to be part of South Australia.
Well, that makes a lot of sense.
Which meant that a huge section of the northern coast of Australia was
in the
on
south.
South Australia. Oh, well.
That was right down the center, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was
Top to
right
bottom.
down the center. And of course, Western Australia is the western third of the country.
Yeah, it's a big hunk.
Big hunk. And,
And nobody lives there.
there are cities there.
Yeah, but they're small.
No, is it Perth? I
I
forget.
think it might be Perth.
I don't remember.
Most
the
of
city.
Australia's cities are in the southeast corner.
Most of them are in the southeast corner, or at least right on the coast. In
On
the
the
south.
coast, yep.
And
No matter where they are, they're on the coast.
Pretty much, except for Alice
Alice
Springs.
Springs.
Okay, we've been talking, and what do we got here? We've got an item from Renew Economy, and you've read the title. I should read this. The Australian Energy Market Operator says Australia is in the midst of what is likely to be the world's fastest energy transition. And it finalized its 20-year blueprint to make that shift from coal to a grid dominated by wind, solar, and energy storage so that it'll happen smoothly. And the thing that's really interesting about this is very few countries are as adamant at the federal level against renewable energy and in favor of fossil fuels as
Well,
Australia.
it's interesting. We've talked about this. The central government is firmly in favor of coal and opposed to renewables.
Yeah.
But all of the local governments are pushing for renewables.
Including liberal governments. Now, reminding
Liberal
people
means
that,
conservative.
Yeah, the federal government in Australia is liberal, which means that it feels naturally allied with the American Republicans and Donald Trump and so forth. But the liberal state governments, and South Australia is the one that really comes to mind here.
Well, we should pronounce liberal differently.
What?
One's got a capital L and the other one's got a small L.
Yes, I suppose.
And they mean two opposite things.
Well, a couple of years ago, we reported this. The government of South Australia, which was it was a Labor government, had this big thing about shifting to renewables, and the Liberal government got voted in and said, "We're not going to do this."
Yeah.
And the thing
We
is,
talked about that.
Yeah, the thing is, the immediate concern was the fact that the Labor government had signed a contract to put 50,000 households into a aggregation I know, it was a virtual microgrid.
Yeah, a virtual grid of some sort. Yeah, we talked about that too.
And
I think we just did it last
signed
week.
contracts, and the Liberal government came in and said, we're going to terminate all those contracts. And then when they discovered how much money they were going to save by having the contracts, they
changed their mind.
Did a complete about face.
Money talks.
It sure does. Okay,
Well, let's see what we got a little bit about here. We got a central message here.
what's that?
The energy transition is inevitable.
Is inevitable.
It's accelerating, and there's not much point in
It
resisting
is accelerating, and the people who are pushing against it, it's like pushing against the tide.
Well, Australia has a natural advantage in wind and solar.
It sure does. Yeah.
Which can position a country to become a renewable energy and economic superpower.
Yeah.
And it seems to be happening as we speak.
It's happening extremely fast. Queensland, upwards of a third of the people in Queensland have got solar panels on their roofs.
And they're doing this without even government subsidies. They're doing it on their own.
Despite the fact that the government is discouraging it. So we have to get on.
Yeah, money talks, you know. If I can put up a solar panel and get a much smaller electric bill, I'm going to do it.
Yep,
And it's sort of slowly happening here.
it is. Okay,
We got a
Friday.
picture coming up here.
Friday, July 31st. We've seen this picture before. There's nothing new about this.
No, because I remarked that's Cleveland in the background.
at least once, maybe twice. But you can do it again, Tom.
Well, that's called the Icebreaker pilot project.
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with breaking ice. Icebreaker is the name of this. It's a turbine. It's only one turbine. It's kind of a.
And it's not, I don't think it's a full-size turbine.
Well,
But
it depends really
nevertheless-
what you mean by full size, but I
Yeah.
think I agree with you there.
This is from Renews.
U.S. lawmakers urge change to Icebreaker shutdown rules. This is ridiculous.
Well, we reported the shutdown rules.
Yeah, we have. We've
Let me
talked about
read
it.
this. This is the next step in this. A bipartisan group of 32 United States legislators. These are not local. These are federal government. Across Northeast Ohio, sent a letter to state authorities requesting reconsideration of operating restrictions placed on the Icebreaker offshore wind project. Last-minute conditions imposed by authorities made the project unfeasible.
This is kind of ridiculous because what they've done, they've imposed a poison pill on this thing,
Yeah,
mandating that the wind farm cease operations at night from March till November.
right.
I mean, the birds know the difference. The 32 legislators comprise almost a quarter of the General Assembly of Ohio.
Okay.
So this is significant opposition.
You know, I should have thought of that. This says U.S. lawmakers, and I assumed that was
No,
federal.
this is the local.
But
this
it's is
the
local lawmakers.
Local House of
Renews said
Representatives.
U.S. because Renews is not a U.S. organization itself.
Yeah.
So they're saying American lawmakers. Yeah, okay. Explained. But nevertheless, it is 32 legislators from both parties in Ohio who are doing this.
Well, they're looking at reality here.
Yes?
I mean, something's going on that we don't know about, but the Public Service Board, they call this a poison pill. That's exactly what it is. Who's pushing this thing? You know, what's really going on? And we don't know.
When you consider the various scandals that are going on right now,
Scandals?
well, you've got a scandal involving, I'm trying to think of the details. I think it's in Ohio, where they had the legislature pushing to subsidize nuclear power, and it turned out that there was
Yeah.
stuff going on that was extremely shady there.
Yeah, we've talked about that.
We
haven't
have,
we?
yeah. Okay.
It's all coming back to me now.
Yeah, well, it's not something that's firmly fixed in my mind, so it's just one of those things. But it does keep coming back.
Well, we got another picture coming up here.
Okay, this is a picture of the Florida coast.
Where is it, do you know?
I honestly don't know, but I would say that doesn't look like the West Coast anyway.
No, it's definitely the East Coast. It's probably Palm Beach or somewhere around
Something
there.
like that, yeah. Okay,
Yeah. Flooding from sea level rise could cost our planet $14.2 trillion.
this is from CNN, and I don't believe that figure at all. I think it'll be much worse than that. But what it says is, if the world does nothing to mitigate rising sea levels, it could cost the global economy $14.2 trillion in lost or damaged assets by the end of the century, as larger areas of land, home to millions of people, are inundated, a study in the journal Science Reports says.
Well, there's an interesting thing here. The article's interesting.
Yeah.
Good article.
It is.
And there's an interesting interactive map
Yes.
that you can play with and see where the sea levels are rising. Kind of scary.
I
And
wanted to
they
put...
also include 2 good short videos. You know, they're less than 5 minutes and they're worth looking at.
Yeah, I didn't watch the videos. I wanted to put the map up so the viewers of this program could see it, but
Hard to do it
It's-
interactively.
yeah,
isn't it?
it's
And without the interactive feature,
Yeah.
it's just a boring map.
that's right. And so if
Look
people
it up,
want to,
though.
if people want to see it, they can go to the
This is one of the better articles.
right. You can go to. I didn't tell people this. You can go to geoharvey.com and click on the date, which in this case is July 31st. Or if you're watching this show on various places, there are links to places, and one of them is a link to Energy Week number 383. And if you click on that, it'll take you to the website that Tom and I used to prepare the show.
Okay,
So-
and you go to that website,
Yeah, go to that website,
and
you can
there's
see
a
the-
link.
That's right. And I'm looking at this and trying to figure out how it's aimed. I can't tell. I'm looking in the wrong place. That's the problem. I'm seeing a glare from it. Okay. Anyway,
Well, a quick takeaway.
yeah, go ahead.
Well, finish what you were going to say.
Okay, people in Vermont, in Brattleboro, should understand that as this happens, the population of Vermont is going to burgeon because people will be moving in from out of state. Over the course of the next 80 years, the population in Vermont is going to go up.
Well, because of this, it's a safer place to go.
And it's going to go up by an amount that will make Vermont into a state that it isn't like now. It will not be.
It could change it drastically.
Yeah, where are all these people? Just think about this. The coast of Florida, actually, the whole state is at risk because.
Well, certainly the southern half of the state.
Well,
big time.
If you think about Miami and you think about the fact that you've got people moving from wealthy areas into Little Haiti because it's 13 feet higher altitude. Well,
that almost doesn't make sense.
When the expensive properties along the coast get to the point where they can't be used anymore,
yeah,
would anybody really want to live in Little Haiti? Really?
It doesn't sound like a nice place to live.
Well, not only that, but you're not going to have places to shop. You're not going to have, it's. How are you going to deal with life if the majority of the
well,
real
there's going to be a lot of changes in Florida, and it's a result of this, direct result.
Absolutely.
Well, there's a quick takeaway here, and we've talked about this before. Sea levels are rising because greenhouse gas emissions are warming the planet.
Yep.
Melting polar ice caps and glaciers. And by the way, if you melt ice at sea, it doesn't raise sea level. If you melt ice on land, like Greenland or the South Pole, it does.
Yes.
Just like you put a lump of ice in a drink.
Yeah.
It doesn't, as it melts, it doesn't raise.
It doesn't change the level of the drink.
But if you stick your finger in the drink,
well, when you put the ice cube in the drink, it'll raise the level. When you first put it in.
Well,
but after that, as it melts, it will not go up in
exactly.
at all.
Well,
Okay.
there's more than 1 million square kilometers of coastline could be compromised, which is an area significantly larger than Texas.
Yes. And
wow.
Where are all of our cities? Well, Kansas City isn't going to be affected, at least not directly.
Well, most all of our large cities are on the coast.
Yeah. And you go
East
down,
and west.
Yeah, you go down the coast, the East Coast, you've got...
Bingo.
Exactly. It's
Boston,
city
New York,
city
Philadelphia.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We should move on, I think.
Yeah, we got another picture here.
We have a picture of wind turbines.
What are these things?
They're wind turbines.
Amazing. I'd have never thought that.
In this particular case, I don't like that picture. It looks...
Well, we'll get rid of it.
It's just, there's too many pointy bits in it. It's like an angry cat. Okay.
UK wind output hits a record of 64 terawatt hours.
Yeah,
That's a lot.
What is a terawatt
in 2019?
I think, yeah. My recollection is, and I could be way off on this, Vermont uses about 6 terawatt hours a year.
I don't know. That's
just a kind of a faint recollection. Total wind generation in the UK rose by 13% in 2019 to a record 64 terawatt hours. The government's digest of the United Kingdom Energy Statistics said wind speeds in 2019 were down from 2018 by 0.31 knots on average, but this was more than offset by additional capacity coming online.
Well, renewables provided a record of 37.1% of the UK's electricity last year, up from 33.1 in 2018 and less than 7% way back in 2010. So this is definitely a trend.
Oh yeah, it is. And the UK is scheduling a shutdown of, I don't know how many coal burning units it's got left, but there aren't many.
Well, it's economics.
Yeah.
They're not paying their own way.
And they have decided to ban fracking.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah.
I don't think fracking is good for anybody. It's not returning the promise that
it's not even good for the workers. They get jobs and they lose them.
Yeah.
And the reason they lose them is because the fracking industry is putting gas into a glutted market.
Well, that's part of what's happening, but the big thing that's happening is they're not delivering on their promise.
No.
They're figuring they're going to get so many cubic feet of gas, and they're getting like a third of that or a quarter of that.
Yeah.
So it's not working out economically at all.
It's not working out.
But we got one coming up here for the 1st of August, which is a Saturday.
That's right.
And we got a picture there.
Particular one is from S&P Global.
And there's a picture coming up.
And I actually wrote an article about this for Clean Technica, and I'll explain it to you. But
well, that's the Prairie Island nuclear plant in Minnesota.
Yeah, which looks very bucolic. So
Xcel Energy temporarily stops load following at Prairie Island after an NRC inspection. And I'll explain what load following is after you.
Okay, Xcel Energy temporarily stopped load following operations at Prairie Island in Minnesota after the NRC determined that the plant procedures should have required further analysis of such operation due to their long-term effects on safety.
Well, load following is a practice that the utilities use, not all of them, where they adjust the output as the demand fluctuates throughout the day. So if you're expecting a lot of air conditioners go on at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they're going to generate more electricity.
Right.
Now that's what they're saying. And they call that flexible power. But there's a problem here in that the means that they use to shut a reactor is with control rods. And these control rods don't work anymore after a usable while. That's the fact. That's what's happening. So this procedure ensures that the control rods that they use to shut a reactor are no longer deployed for load after a certain number of years, right, as they may not longer be able to perform. They're using a back door here.
Well, here's the thing, and this is what I said in the Clean Technica article. This is a baseload power plant. It was designed to be very efficient when it's running at 100% of capacity.
Right.
And what they're doing is they're following
cutting
the
back.
rules. Now, in the baseload power paradigm, which was, I don't know when it was developed, I would say the 1920s, but it was
I was just going to say the same thing.
Slow process that started at the beginning of our electric.
They get it running, they leave it running for a couple of weeks.
But the problem is the base load is the lowest load that you would get. You don't want to be generating electricity that you don't have demand for, because you're gonna fry something if you do. So you build the plant so that it will just cover the base load,
which is the lowest amount of load it sees.
Exactly. So you have to build another power plant, and that is a load following plant. Well, between the two, you've got a load following plant.
Yeah. Well, is it a separate load following plant?
There is, in some places they have plants that are just...
Otherwise, you're just cranking up the...
and the load following plants take hours to change, whereas the peaking plants take minutes to change.
And they're very expensive to operate.
And they're very expensive. Load following plants are more expensive to run, and running a base load power plant like this nuclear plant as a load following plant is a symptom of its inability to deal with current market.
Well, in a way, this is going to be self-correcting because these large plants are going to be fading out.
Absolutely.
Just as we've spoken here, it's just economics.
It's just economics. What's happened is wind turbines come online. They're very easy to curtail. You can say to a wind turbine, okay, just turn.
Just feather the blades.
Exactly. Don't worry about it. And it stops producing electricity. So in the old days, it was really easy. And by old days, I mean 10 years ago. In the old days, it was really easy. If you had too much electricity in the middle of the night, when the wind turbines wanted to go around anyway, because the wind was blowing, but there wasn't any demand, you'd tell the wind turbines to furl and use baseload power. But the electricity from the wind turbines fell below the cost of the electricity from baseload power, so the utilities didn't want to use baseload anymore. And now what's happened is you've got...
Well, this is predictable, really.
Yeah, and you've got a nuclear power plant that was built to be a very inflexible baseload power plant.
You can't turn it on and off in less than 2 or 3 weeks.
I've been watching as, I forget, I think it's Fermi 2, came online, and it's it's at 2% one day, and it's at 4% the next day, and it's at 8% the day after that. And here we are, it's at 20% today, and it came online 2 weeks ago. It just takes forever for some of these things.
Well,
And-
basically, they're just using the heat generated by a nuclear process
Yeah,
to boil water.
yeah. And they've got
That takes a long time.
and their tea kettle is the size of a building. It's just, okay. We should probably.
Yeah, we got a picture coming up here.
We do.
Let's get that picture.
This is a
up.
very boring picture. I'm sorry for it, but nevertheless, that's it. And this is from a magazine called The Chemical Engineer.
Well, CRI is a company, Carbon Recycling International, and they successfully demonstrate chemical storage with renewable methanol. This is an interesting new concept, new to me,
Well, it's the thing that's new about it.
is how they make the methanol.
I think they knew how to make the methanol.
Well, they've been making it out of fossil fuel.
Yeah, but I think they knew how to make CO2 and so forth into methanol many years ago. But the thing that's new about it is they didn't know how to do it cheaply.
Okay,
You know.
okay.
But go ahead, Tom.
CRI successfully demonstrates I said this one already.
Well, I'm
chemical
sorry.
storage with
I
renewable methanol.
I should have just piled in behind you. Carbon Recycling International has shown that the renewable methanol can be used to store surplus renewable energy chemically. CRI developed a process to convert captured CO2 and hydrogen directly into methanol by use of catalysts.
Well, that's the development here.
Yeah, that's the
the
development.
difference here.
And-
I'll give you a quick rundown on methanol.
Okay.
It's also called methyl alcohol or wood alcohol, and it's poisonous.
Yeah.
This is what
Will make
blinds
you
people.
blind.
Yep. It's a colorless, flammable liquid typically produced from fossil fuels. It's a key feedstock in the chemicals industry. So there's much demand for methanol.
There's a lot of demand for methanol.
So methanol, in this particular case, is much cheaper to use for energy storage compared to hydrogen.
Oh,
As we've spoken, hydrogen's tough.
hydrogen is a tough
And it can
proposition.
use, this is important, the existing infrastructure.
Yes.
You pump it right in there along with natural gas, and it doesn't know the difference.
Well,
goes right to the
methanol
methanol.
is a liquid.
Well,
So
it
you can-
says it can use the existing infrastructure. So
I think they're
methanol
talking
is a
about-
liquid.
Yeah, I think they're
It's-
talking about gasoline type.
I guess it is. Well, it's an alternative to ammonia. And we've talked about storing ammonia.
Yeah, and methanol would be easier to store than ammonia, I think. I am worried about methanol because of the fact that even the fumes will make you blind.
Well, is that so?
Oh yeah,
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah. I had a friend who was a pharmaceutical chemist when I was a young man, and I
Yeah.
remember in those days we were talking about alternatives to gasoline and to using fossil fuels, and somebody was suggesting putting methanol into the gasoline.
Yeah.
And he was upset about this. He said, if we put methanol in the gasoline, people are going to start going blind and they won't know why. But,
Yeah, I hear you.
you know, so we put ethanol into the gasoline instead.
Okay.
That's the
Drinking alcohol.
drinking alcohol, which does blind people, but only temporarily. So that's, you know, this is just one more step. How this is all going to shake down, I don't know. It'll take
Well,
time. But it's
There's a
gonna
lot
be-
of people working on things like this.
Absolutely.
And some of them are going to change. things.
That's right. And the methanol process that they've developed might turn out to be important. It might not. We just don't know. But it is one of many things.
Well, it sounds better to use natural ways than to use oil as feedstock.
Yeah, I would say so. Should we go on?
Yeah, I guess we can. We're going to visit the stock market now.
Yep. And we have an item here from HuffPost.
Oil giants post historic losses as COVID-19 obliterates demand.
You know, actually, you can see from this chart that it isn't just COVID-19. But let me read the
No, there it is right on the end there.
yeah, synopsis.
Both Chevron and Exxon
Yep.
have dipped. Matter of fact, it's amazing how closely they follow each other.
Yeah. With the pandemic and crude oil glut, the country's two largest oil giants posted their steepest losses in modern history. ExxonMobil posted a $1.1 billion loss in the year's second quarter. That's just in the second quarter. Chevron Corporation lost $8.3 billion, including a $5.2 billion write-down on assets. I want to point out this is a 5-year graph. So here we are, 2/3 of the way through 2020.
They're pretty flat for most of those 5 years.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. Yeah, this starts in 2015, and the graph goes up a little bit until the beginning of 2016, and then for the ExxonMobil stock, it just doesn't go up.
Pretty flat.
It doesn't go up above that. And, still, it's down. It says in the upper right-hand corner, ExxonMobil is down 45.95%, but that is over the 5 years. Over the time that Donald Trump has been in office, it's lost about 50% of its value. ExxonMobil.
Don't tell anybody.
Oh, man. And Chevron is down 2.28% over 5 years, but it looks like it's probably down about 15% during the time that Donald Trump has been in office. The COVID-19
doesn't look good for
either of them. No,
companies.
it does not. And COVID-19 caused a big dip on the right-hand side of this after the start of 2020. But they were already in trouble.
Yes, they were. Well, you can see that.
Yeah. And so they're just being put into more trouble. And honestly,
Exxon's
Tom,
particularly in trouble.
based on what I've been reading in other markets, it looks to me like that trouble is not going to end when people have got a way to deal with COVID-19. And the reason I say that is because the auto industry was hit really hard. I'm talking about new cars.
Yes, it is. That's absolutely correct.
But the interesting thing is, electric automobiles haven't been hit that hard. And some of them have seen increased sales, even with COVID-19.
Well, when you think about it, that's logical.
I mean, you can charge your car at home by plugging it in.
Yeah.
You don't have to go to a gas station.
And if you got a solar carport, it doesn't cost you anything.
Yeah. And
Which we will see, by the way, coming up.
yes, we will. And we should probably go on because I think we're running out of time already. And
Well, let's take a look at some raspberries, okay?
Raspberries, here we go. We're up
There
to
we
Sunday,
go.
August 2nd.
Make you hungry already. Raspberries can grow under solar panels.
Whoa.
Who'd have known?
Who'd have
Who'd have
thought?
thunk?
This is from Energy Live News. I love this article. What may have been a crazy idea a few years ago, it turns into a project in the Netherlands. A Dutch farm had 10,250 solar panels deployed across 3.2 hectares of raspberry crops. I don't know how many acres that is, but a hectare is, what is it?
It's 8 acres.
8 acres. So they've got 8 acres of raspberry crops, and they've covered them with solar panels. And they provide renewable energy for the area and create a more sustainable environment for the raspberries to grow
That's the
in.
interesting part of it. They grow better.
We've seen this where Fraunhofer Institute, and I've forgotten what university or was it in
Germany.
Well, Fraunhofer is in Germany, but there was one in Arizona.
Yes.
Separately,
yes.
they both looked at the same thing. Fraunhofer found that under the conditions that prevailed for that particular summer in Germany, potato crop grown under solar panels was more productive than the potato.
Well, one of the things that we know is solar panels take up a lot of real estate. But when you think of it just that way, it almost doesn't make sense. But if you can grow something under those panels,
Yeah.
or do something else with the land under the panels, you got a double dip income coming in.
That's right.
And as it's turning out, many crops, not all of them, but many crops actually grow better under the panels. And that's what they're talking about here with the raspberries, and I guess pretty nearly all berries.
That's what
Almost anything but corn.
Well, and corn is a terrible crop, if you don't mind my saying so.
Yeah.
I grew up, half my childhood was in Illinois, and we learned the most destructive crops because it was an agricultural community. We'd go to school, and here, the most destructive crops in terms of soil destruction were corn, tobacco, and cotton.
Yes,
And,
yes, that's exactly right.
Corn is really hard on the land.
Well, most of the corn that's being grown is not for human consumption, it's for cattle.
It's for, or
It's
other
feed.
things.
Huh?
For making ethanol for gasoline.
Well, yeah.
You know. So,
I still think most of it's consumed by cattle.
I think it is,
Food,
yeah. But ethanol is a big deal. But I think I'm really at a loss to think of a good reason to grow corn.
Well, a little takeaway here. The panels created a more favorable lower temperature and protected the crops in a better way from unpredictable weather conditions. So it's a win-win situation.
Absolutely. Okay, we should go on. And we don't have a picture for this one, but it's from
we don't need a picture.
Econo Times.
Deutsche Bank to discontinue lending to coal mines.
What? Is this really happening? Deutsche Bank announced that it would discontinue doing business with companies that are most exposed to coal mining by 2025 at the latest. Deutsche Bank also said that it would cease financing new projects in the Arctic and oil sand areas immediately.
It's the economics, stupid.
It is, but interesting here is those Arctic and oil sand areas.
They're risky. They don't want to take the risk.
They're not coal. They're shale oil and Arctic oil
and oil sand.
So Deutsche Bank is really targeting all fossil fuels here. And
I think you can take that message away.
And the reason they're doing it, they say right there, they are doing this to companies that are most exposed, and that's a
the operative
financial
word. Yep.
Yeah, that is a financial term.
Well, the article mentions that Deutsche Bank is lagging behind its rivals.
Yeah,
and they mentioned BNP, Paribas, and NatWest Group. I don't know NatWest on climate, so they're not even catching up. They're lagging.
That's right. Also, yes.
Other companies are doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, you got another picture coming up here.
We do
indeed. Coal-burning power plants.
These are coal power plants in Wisconsin.
Is that where they are?
I believe so, yes.
Well, the WEC, which is the Wisconsin Public Service utility, pledges to be carbon neutral by 2050. That's doable.
Yeah, WEC Energy Group, which owns We Energies and Wisconsin Public Service, is pledging to go carbon neutral by 2050. You said that was doable. I think it would be unavoidable.
Unavoidable, yeah, absolutely.
Joining a growing list of companies that are looking to step up their carbon reduction goals. Now, this is not introduce carbon reduction goals. This is to step them up. It has set a new goal to reduce carbon emissions to by 70% over the next decade.
Well, the article says this is one of the nation's largest electric utilities, and they're pledging to go carbon neutral by 2050.
Yeah.
Which, according to the article, is joining a growing list of companies that are looking to step up their carbon reduction goals.
Yep.
And Sierra Club's Beyond Coal campaign suggests that utilities need to be looking beyond carbon emissions at the upstream emissions from extracting and transporting fuels, which we normally forget about. They're real.
Yeah, they are. They are
don't
real.
Think about it too
There's
much.
no question about it. They are real. Well, environmentalists very often look at these things. For example, when you talk about making ethanol to replace some of the gasoline, a lot of environmentalists say, okay, how much?
How about making the ethanol?
Yeah, how much gasoline is used growing the corn? What is the carbon footprint of the fungicides and pesticides?
Well, it's valid to look at those costs.
Absolutely.
They're real costs.
You've got to process this corn into ethanol. How much does it cost to do that in terms of carbon emissions?
So it sounds good on the left hand, but the right hand is telling
there
a
have
different
been
message.
people who have looked at this and they have said we are increasing carbon emissions by using ethanol.
That's interesting.
And I find that very easy to believe because I had a Prius, which meant that I was able to monitor the emissions that I had, not emissions, but my use of gasoline per mile traveled.
Okay.
Pretty closely. And one of the things that I noticed was that when I could no longer get 100% gasoline, and every place I could get gasoline from was 10% ethanol, my gas mileage was reduced by 10%.
It dropped. So you didn't gain anything at all.
I didn't gain anything at all. It was just an
I've heard that before.
Yeah.
That putting ethanol in gasoline it didn't save anything at all.
And if you try to put too much in, you destroy the engine.
It doesn't run right.
It doesn't run.
Yeah.
You'll destroy. There's a point at which you start dissolving things with the.
Yeah.
Now, anyway, we should go on.
We got another picture coming up here. Let's
There's a
get a
picture
look
of
at that one.
coal. Somebody
That's a lump of coal.
It's a lump
That's
of coal.
what you get in your Christmas stocking if you've been a bad boy.
You know, there's logic to that, by the way.
Is there?
Yeah. If you give coal to the child can choose when to make the fire.
The child what?
Can choose when to make the fire. So if the child gets cold, he can say, "I want to be toasty," and use a little bit of his Christmas present to warm up. But the catch to this, and the reason why it's important, is because he cannot have that fire all to himself.
Okay.
It is something that he shares.
Yep.
So anyway, there it is. Coal. This is from Urban Milwaukee.
We'll look at that picture again. It's big. That's a big lump of coal.
I think it's actually
It looks
two.
like a couple lumps of coal.
Yeah. So this is from Urban Milwaukee. We're going to run over in the show. I'm sorry about that, but it's unavoidable. We're talking too much, Tom. What do you got for a title?
More coal power generation closed than opened around the world
You
this
got
year.
the wrong one. This is WEC. Oh, we just did that. I'm sorry. You're right. This is from The Guardian.
Yep.
More coal power generation closed than opened around the world this year, research finds. The size of a coal-burning fleet fell for the first time on record after over the first 6 months of the year, with more generation capacity shutting down than starting operation, according to the Global Energy Monitor, a U.S. research and advocacy group. Now, I want to point out here, the UK is in the process of closing down its last few coal-burning power plants.
Yes.
The United States has been closing coal-burning power plants fairly frequently and has not brought anything online for years.
Yes, it's the economics.
So it's the economics. So, and this kind of thing is that Germany is now closing down its coal fleet.
China is marching to a different drummer.
Well, I don't know what's going on in China. You know, we're talking about you've called it a command economy, which is exactly what it is. I don't know what the people in China are thinking.
Well, it's home to half the world's operating coal-fired electricity right now.
It's also
It's continuing to increase its coal power.
Yeah.
In India, new construction has ground to a near halt.
Yes.
Okay, more than 27 gigawatts have been canceled in India.
Yeah.
And right now, you'll hear this again. Clean energy is now the cheapest option worldwide.
Yes. And that's the thing. Now we're going to
So we've
see.
been talking about China, so let's look at some wind turbines in China.
Yeah. This is from Renews.
251 gigawatts. That's a lot. A gigawatt is a bigawatt of new Chinese wind expected this decade. What are they doing? It seems like the right hand's doing one thing and the left hand's
That's
doing
why
another.
I can't figure out what's going on in China. It looks like two different groups of people are doing two different things. Maybe it's one group of people doing two different things. China is expected to add 251 gigawatts of new wind capacity through 2029, but additions will take a 16% hit from next year due to the end of subsidies, according to Wood Mackenzie. So this is a U.S. Financial organization that's running an assessment on China here. The country's wind power market could reach a cumulative grid connective capacity of 461 gigawatts by the end of the
That's a few gigawatts, I tell you.
That's a lot. You know, it's hard to imagine how they're going to be keeping coal-burning power plants running with that much wind power online. These coal-burning power plants are all going to be
They got to be
baseload.
losing money.
They're all baseload, and in China, they're running at capacity factors of like 55%. Their wind turbines are
So
almost
they're losing money, big time.
They're losing money big time. Why are they building new ones? I don't get it.
Well,
I just don't get it.
things are a little strange in China.
Well, yeah,
A lot of it's political.
China is the only country in the world whose highest level of office is occupied by a man who had lived for a considerable period of time in a cave.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
He's an interesting character. He knows how to live in a cave. This is the guy, I forget his name.
Oy vey. Well, we got
Is that
another.
a Chinese term?
Huh?
Oy vey, is that a Chinese term?
It's Yiddish and it means, oh, whoa. Like, oh, woe is me.
Yeah.
Oy vey.
Vey is a German word that means pain.
Well, Yiddish is German.
That's right.
It's a dialect of German.
There was a guy who was a plenipotentiary in part of Poland, during the Second World War
Yeah.
who was told to get rid of everybody who was not Aryan, and especially the Jews.
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, what's Aryan or German? What is it? What do we count as German? Anybody who speaks a German dialect is German." In his mind, Yiddish was a German dialect.
It is.
So for several years, much to the dismay of people around Hitler, this guy was not doing anything with the local with the local Jewish population
Because you said they're Germans.
because he said they're German.
Yeah.
And he was removed, and then terrible things happened. But nevertheless, it was Hitler said, "I'm not going to remove that guy from office because he's doing good work. He's producing a lot of munitions or whatever it was." But that was anyway.
Well,
I'm sorry for the
we're running
digression.
behind here, but
Boy, are we ever?
we'll just have to figure out what to do with it. Maybe we'll
guess.
run for an hour and a half this week. Or
Maybe.
something.
Okay, so
Well, we got a picture coming up again.
of another wind turbine.
Another wind farm.
This one is in Ireland.
Yeah, it's the
And-
same picture. I compressed my pictures here so it looks different, but it's the same picture.
Okay, this is in Ireland, and
Ireland is on track to meet the 2020
I was
Clean
blown
Power
away
goal.
when
What?
I was blown away when I hit this headline. I was absolutely blown away because Ireland, a year and a half ago, was in desperate trouble to install renewable energy, or it was going to pay a huge fine to the EU.
Well, they don't have much offshore wind, but they do have onshore wind.
Yeah,
I mean, you
I'm-
drive through the countryside. It's not unusual to see a wind turbine on a farm.
Yeah, I am going to ask you to read that again.
Ireland on track to meet 2020 Clean Power goal.
I cut into your saying that before you finished. Ireland is on track to reach its 2020 renewable energy target to get 40% of its electricity from clean power after a strong second quarter saw wind energy alone deliver 28.5% of the country's electricity. That's up from 26.1% in the second quarter of last year, and new wind farms are coming online.
Well, Ireland right now is number one in the world for the share of electricity met by onshore wind, which has been providing a third of the country's electricity.
Who'd have thunk?
And they still burn peat to make electricity.
Yeah,
there.
they're going to stop that at some point.
Oh, yeah. It's now clearly on track to reach its 40% 2020 renewable electricity target.
Yep.
And we're up to Tuesday, August 4th.
With an article from Clean Technica
And
and
there's
a
a lonely
lonely
truck.
truck. And I want to point out this
It looks pretty lonely.
this picture is about this article is about roads not being used, and the picture for the next article also shows exactly that. But
It shows what?
the roads that are not used.
The next picture is a wind farm.
Look at the road; it's not used. I just put it up.
Oh, okay, you're right. There's no cars on it.
Yeah.
Yep, it's
Okay.
a wind farm in Texas. Well, road revenue plummets. New ways to fund infrastructure projects are needed.
With COVID,
So because we're losing traffic, we're losing road revenue, we're losing fuel taxes,
all of that.
and
How are we going to keep up these roads if nobody's
if
using
you don't
them?
have any money.
Yeah. With COVID-19, traffic has been reduced to a fraction of what it had been. As road revenue plummets because of low sales of gasoline and diesel oil, road infrastructure projects that keep our labor force on the job and support the economy are in real jeopardy. And yes, there you see a lonesome truck.
Well, this is an important and it's an in-depth article. This is a good article. If you get a chance to read this
It's important that people understand this because we're going to be facing this as an issue over the next.
This has a lot of implications.
Yes, it has a lot of implications. It's an issue that has been around for a long time, for the last few years, because of increasing number of electric vehicles that are on the road, and they don't buy
They don't pay road tax
gasoline
yet.
Yeah, they're going to have to.
They're trying to
and of
figure out
course,
what to do about
people
that.
who own them would just say this is
Well,
really
I got
terrible.
a little thing to say that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Raising motor fuel taxes could provide the Highway Trust Fund with sufficient revenue to fully fund the program in the near term, but may not be a viable long-term solution due to expected declines in fuel consumption, due in part to increasing number of electric vehicles. Okay.
There you've got
And
it.
electric vehicles do not pay, as of now, motor fuel taxes.
Yeah, we've got to
So
find
it-
a better way.
So replacing motor fuel taxes with a vehicle miles travel charge would overcome a variety of barriers, but it could be a solution in the longer term.
Right.
So you get a per mile charge rather than a per gallon charge.
Right.
Yeah. We got a picture that you already mentioned. It's a wind farm in Texas.
There's the wind farm.
And as you mentioned there is nobody on that road.
Yep.
It's time for American leaders to wake up to the threat of climate change for the good of the planet and of business.
And
I'd almost like to say that again, but I won't.
Okay. This is from Time Magazine, believe it or not. If left unchecked, the impact of climate change will alter our world, reshaping our coastlines and coastal cities, accelerate extinctions, devastate agriculture, cause famine, ravage the economy, and threaten our health. Not only that, it will not be fun.
I think so. The article's interesting article. It's written by John Kasich, who used to be in Congress, and he was governor of Ohio.
Right.
About 20 years ago, I think.
It was pretty recent.
Well, more recently, he's been governor. He was in the House a long time ago.
I think, let's see, I voted for John Kasich
I think I did too.
In a Republican primary because I knew that in Vermont people were going to put the majority of the votes in for Bernie. And I would have voted for Bernie. But I said to myself, I've got an opportunity to choose the opposition. And so I decided that I would vote for John Kasich because I would rather have him be the president of the United States than anybody else in that field, which he was running against Donald Trump and a bunch of other people.
Uh-huh.
And so I voted for John Kasich. And, people said, you're casting a spoiler vote. No, I'm not casting a spoiler vote. I'm casting the vote for the person I would like to see win the Republican nomination.
Isn't that what it's supposed to be?
I think that's what it is, yes.
Well, let's move on here and take a look at an irrigation canal.
Yes, let's do that.
And there it is.
There it is, an irrigation canal.
And you can see somebody standing in the canal, but look at that superstructure. There's all solar panels on it.
That's all solar panels. And this is from the BBC.
The solar canals are making smart use of India's space.
One of the main challenges in building solar farms in India is finding good places to build them. The high population density makes it hard to find sites for solar arrays. Rooftop solar is used, but roofs are inadequate for the need. In Gujarat, the answer has been to cover its canals with solar panels. And covering the canals has other advantages besides getting
That's what the article says. It benefits water conservation below and cooling the panels above.
Right. It means that because there's water under, the panels are cooler and they're more efficient. But because there's panels over, less of the water evaporates.
So it's a win-win situation.
Absolutely.
Well, Gujarat, which is a state, has more than 50,000 miles of canals. So they got a chance to do a lot of solar here.
Yes, they do.
If 30% of this were converted to solar, 18 gigawatts of power could be produced. Now, that's a lot.
That's a lot.
So far, 8 Indian states besides Gujarat, 7 besides Gujarat, have commissioned canal solar projects. So the canals are used for irrigation for farming. And they're there. They've been there.
Yes.
Okay, so we're double using the real estate.
We could triple use it if we just planted raspberries along those banks.
You're not far from right. You are right, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we got another picture coming up, and I
We
like
do
this
indeed.
picture here.
And let's see, this is an item from Clean Technica.
And there it comes.
And
That's a heck of a motor.
I want to tell everybody, before we started the show, Tom and I were talking about how absolutely astonishing that motor is and how exciting it is to see that thing. And, I said, I have a feeling that many of our viewers will not get excited about it.
Well, that sits in right in the middle of the axle of the car. So it's actually 2 motors, each one driving 1 wheel.
Yep.
That's basically what it is.
And
that's the Yamaha people who do know how to make motors.
Yamaha people know how to make motors, and this is an interesting one. And as I said,
Yamaha is creating high-performance electric motors for mainstream manufacturers. So they're getting into the business of making a motor for somebody else.
The EV revolution keeps pushing forward, and Yamaha has turned its attention to designing and building high-output electric motors that are as small and light as possible. It will soon offer a range of motors ranging from 35 kilowatts, which is 47 horsepower, to 200 kilowatts, which is
That's a good-sized motor.
268 horsepower. I want to point something out about these horsepower, Tom. This is a direct translation of electric energy to horsepower. And there is no way you can go from 268 horsepower in a gasoline powered engine to what these things are going to be putting on the road.
So you're going to step on the gas, it's going to jump
This
forward.
thing, 268 horsepower, I have no idea what that means.
Not in reality.
Not in reality, but my guess is that if you had a car that was a normal weight car and you just pushed your accelerator to the floor from a standstill, you would leave a very long streak of rubber on the road. Because 200,
You step on the gas and you lose your lower plate.
gasoline motors, I forget how efficient they are in terms of what is delivered to the road, but
Yeah.
they're low efficiency.
It's low.
They're like, what is it, Tom? 18%, 16%?
I don't know the number, but it's much lower than you would expect.
Much. And these things are going to be a much higher percentage of the stated amount is actually going to be delivered. And I also want to point out that they say this 35 kilowatt thing
Yeah.
is for a motorcycle.
Well, that's what they say. The 35 kilowatts
This
are
is-
for motorcycles, the 200 kilowatts for cars.
This is a 47
It-
horsepower motor.
Yeah, which is
Electric
tiny. I mean,
motor.
there's a picture of it in the article, and it's small.
47 horsepower electric motor in a
Motorcycle. You're going to go pretty
And
fast.
Consider what I just said about cars. That's going to be one incredibly powerful motorcycle.
Yeah, but it's not going to fly. They don't make enough noise.
Well,
If they made a quiet motorcycle, it couldn't sell it in America.
but you know what you do? First of all, you take those wheels they've got and you make sure you replace them with spoked wheels.
Yeah.
And then you take playing cards.
Playing cars, right? Like we used to do with a bicycle. Well, Yamaha can adapt the design of its permanent magnet motors to fit the needs of virtually every vehicle manufacturer. So I think they got a good idea here.
Yeah,
They know how to make a motor. They're going to make the motors, and the motors are going to pop up in cars.
that's right. Okay, should we go on?
Yeah, we got another one here.
We have another article from
Well,
Clean
this is from the
Technical.
article, and it's just the same thing I just said. Some bemoan the absence of a powerful exhaust note.
Right.
Well, let's look at the solar array here,
Yes,
which you have up already.
I do.
You're anticipating me.
I did.
Siemens seeks to optimize microgrid solutions with new building management system integration. And if you look at that, that's a parking lot,
Yep.
and they've got solar panels that are shielding the cars,
Yep.
and they're generating electricity, and it's a considerable amount of electricity.
It is. And if you look at the shadows on that, you'll see that the solar panels are actually tilted in the direction of the shadows, which means that the sun is kind of behind the panels.
Yep,
And my guess is that those panels are facing east.
I was going to say east-west, yep.
Yeah, because the panels in the upper right-hand corner are tilted in the opposite direction.
Yeah, they are.
And, there are solar panels.
So they're not changing the orientation
No,
of
they're
those
not.
panels. They're fixed.
I think it's Panasonic HIT panels. They say that panel will actually generate electricity if there are fluffy clouds in the air that are very white after the sun goes down.
Wow.
So, the fact that the sun is behind these doesn't mean that somebody made a mistake. Okay.
Siemens, did I read this one?
Yes, I believe
Yeah,
you
it
did. Siemens is pushing into the microgrid development with the launch of a microgrid test bed at the New Jersey R&D facility. It is a living lab to explore the integration of a wide range of traditional microgrid components with the building itself. This is a Clean Technica article.
Well, one of the things about microgrids is you can island themselves.
Yes.
When a grid goes down, you can keep your grid going,
The
your
microgrid
local grid
keeps
going.
Yeah.
And that's what this is about. It's
Right.
about managing their local grid when it's operating. And in this particular case, they're generating almost as much electricity right in their parking lot as they use.
Right.
Okay, they're it's 60% now. They're aiming for 80% just from the parking lot.
Right.
So the microgrid incorporates the megawatt-hour battery storage system, which can power the facility for up to 3 hours.
There you go.
I mean, this whole thing is an experiment, but it's a good one.
It's a good one.
Their intent is to learn from it, but also to use it for their own uses.
Yes. And they're going to be doing a lot of work in this living lab that will be used to develop that and make it more efficient.
Well, we got one more coming up.
We do, and that has a very
picture also.
Very uninteresting picture.
A portable EV fast charger. So you can push that thing around your parking lot and charge your car wherever the heck it's parked.
I guess.
Well, that's got to be what the reason.
It could be used in an emergency situation.
Well, one of the things I've always wondered about with a car is what do you do with it when you're on the road, you're running out of power, and there's no place near it to recharge? What do you do?
Well, I have you ever taken a ride in a Tesla?
Yes.
Was that Jason's?
Huh?
Jason's Tesla?
Yeah.
Yeah. I rode in his Tesla also, and I was curious about that. He had just got it, and I don't know.
Well, he's unusual because he plots his trips out to the inch.
Well, but the thing is, he showed me how it was done, and it was so easy that I
If
think
you're like him, it's easy.
yeah. No, you don't have to be like him. You just say, how far can I go? Where are the places I can recharge?
That's what I mean, like him.
Bang, bang, bang.
He knows all of that stuff.
Well, but the car knows it.
The car knows it.
The car knows it, and it'll
okay.
tell you the next place that you can get to that is convenient is over here, and you can pull in. And nowadays
That comes right up on a screen.
it comes up on a screen. Nowadays it'll say there are 8 outlets there, and 4 of them are in use.
Well, that's good to know.
It gets all of the information in real time. So
I was figuring out these things need a small auxiliary gas-powered engine to recharge a car if they run out on the road.
In this case, they've got this little thing, but the article isn't about this little thing. We should talk about the article because this is an important article.
BP to cut oil production 40% by 2030 and invest billions in green energy. Now that's BP. That's British Petroleum.
That's British Petroleum.
They're no slouch.
No, they're doing. Of course, they're way behind Danish oil and
Yes, they
natural
are.
gas, but which became Dong and is now Ørsted. But
It's a better name than Dong, I think.
Huh?
Better name than Dong.
I think Ørsted is a better name than Dong. Yeah, BP. One of my sons had a toy apple, and if you jiggled it, it would ring.
They would ring?
Yeah, and it was a big apple. It was like this big.
Yeah.
And I said, "What does this mean?" And a little kid, he said, "I don't know." And I said, "It means the big apple's full of dingalings."
The Big Apple what?
Is full of dingalings. And every time I think of the name Dong for Danish oil and natural gas,
Think of dinglings.
I think of
Ding
dingalings.
dong.
Yeah, BP announced that it was planning to cut its oil and gas production 40% and will invest billions of dollars into clean energy. This is part of a major strategic plan that was unveiled along with gigantic second quarter loss and a cut in dividends.
Which we've seen.
Yeah, and this is across the industry. They are aware of the fact, clearly aware of the fact, that there is an inherent lack of security in fossil fuels.
Well, they expect that the demand for fossil fuels will fall by 75% over the next 30 years.
Yeah,
That's a significant fall.
it's a significant fall, but again, we've never been through a fall like that in history, and it's hard to know. It's hard to know how that market is going to work. My expectation is that as the demand falls, the cost of oil and gas is going to increase. It's going to do
Yes, it will.
exactly the opposite
Yeah.
of what we've been taught.
Which is the worst thing it can do.
Absolutely, and the result of that is if we could project a 75% fall in 30 years. Given current projections, I would expect that the 75% fall might happen in 20 years.
Well, BP is looking at the future and they're planning for it.
Yeah.
Okay, and as a sign of this, in June, BP sold its petrochemicals business,
Yes.
which was huge.
Yeah, we talked about that on this show. So, we have used up
I think we've finished
all of our stories,
used up our time.
and we've gone 20 minutes at least over, for which I apologize. But
We'll figure out how to deal with that.
only a little bit am I going to apologize because it was very much fun.
It was good stuff.
And we hope to see everybody back. Actually, that's a silly thing to say. We hope everybody will come back and see us again. And so we bid you a good week.
Adios,
Adios.
amigos.